Campers of Reddit, what's the most disturbing thing you have saw while camping? While hiking in Sweden, I slept in a 3-side shelter when suddenly at 11 p.m. some people came up to me asking me what I was doing, etc. Neighborhood watch and telling me that there are strange people around. An hour or two after, I heard some more footsteps and an old man came close to the shelter with no pants, naked. Dongdingeling. Moon was bright. When he saw me sleeping there, he went away after a while. A couple came to the spot next to ours after we had been camping for a few days. They were there for about 2 hours after unpacking and setting up camp, just practicing knife throwing and cracking a whip. One of them cut their finger off and the other came and asked if we could watch their campsite until they got back. We did. We also played Indiana Jones for about 3 hours drunk off our ass trying to swing from a broken branch of a tree with a whip. They never came back and we let the park ranger know to look after their stuff. My friends and I went camping a few years ago, just a campsite in Wales, but I remember waking up at 3 a.m. needing the toilet and stumbled past an extremely obese couple having very loud and aggressive sex in the shower's toilet area. Was half pissed, but they didn't even stop when I walked in. They did have the decency to almost slow down to a snail pace as I awkwardly peed and made sure to head out as quickly as possible and not make eye contact. I was like 8 to 9 years old when I saw my grandpa standing bare naked by the river in the middle of the night when I had to go to pee, something that scared the crap out of me as I didn't see that it was him at first. He was apparently just taking a quick bath, something he usually does at nighttime when he's out camping, but the sight of him standing there still haunts me a little to this day. Went to the forest with some friends one winter. We were completely unprepared and ended up sleeping bunched in a tiny tent in the snow. I woke up in the middle of the night hearing these grunting noises next to my head. I thought it was my friend snoring, but then realized there was this giant snout poking the fabric of the tent on the outside and literally breathing in my face. I barely held myself from screaming when the bear got bored of trying to get inside and left. We went outside in the morning and there were massive paw prints everywhere, plus the leftovers of our food were gone. Lesson learned the hard way. Gotta rewind like 25 years, the Blair Witch Project had recently come out. This is pre-internet for all intents and purposes, and the rumors were that it was real found footage. Silly to say today, I know. We woke up in the morning to find stones piled in front of our tent like in the movie. I'm sure it was just some kids from a neighboring camp, but it still freaked us out. NSFW, Lamar Valley, Yellowstone NP, 2006. A man and woman pulled into the turnoff I was parked at and proceeded to walk about 50 feet down the hill and set up a nice little picnic spread. After setting up their blanket, I expected for them to unload their food. Nope. In the basket was about 25 various sized stuffed animals. Beanie Babies, large stuffed plush toys, etc. They then proceeded to have a play date with them. I couldn't hear exactly what was being said, but it obviously sexual in nature. I watched them for several minutes before leaving and spent the remainder of the day fishing around the park. Around dusk, I returned to my campsite to find them 2 sites down from me. Of course, all the plush toys were set up at the picnic table in front of the fire. NSFW part. Once fully dark, they retreated to their tent and proceeded to engage in sexual acts with the plush toys. I will not repeat everything that I overheard, but I can assure you that these stuffed animals were inside of one of them. Push it out like it's your little fuzzy baby, bitch, will remain with me for the rest of my life. Their silhouettes in the tent will never leave my mind. Anyway, I left and drove to another campground halfway across the park. Forever ago my friend and I were camping in a horse pasture, with the owner's permission with my friend's horse. It damn near crushed me when it decided that he wanted to be in the tent too and see what we were doing. For some reason some people don't actually sit on the toilet seat in the campground vault toilets. Nothing is scarier than waking up at 3 a.m. half drunk, half hungover when you are camping and walking to the bathroom to find someone hover shit all over the toilet seat and didn't even attempt to clean it up. Not long ago, me and my friend went camping together. It was a public trail, so other campers were expected. Though, I didn't expect to wake up at 4 a.m. to a balding middle-aged man squatting behind a tree about 3 or 4 meters from our tent with a trowel in hand. We locked eyes and he just said, "I'd give it 5 minutes." One time there were these campers across from us at another site and they were late 20s. They were drinking late into the night, which usually isn't a problem, Corps of Engineers Park, but this one fucker would make this loud scream every time he took a shot and he wouldn't stop doing it. At around 2 am finally someone pulled up on a gator and told them all to shut up. This guy wasn't getting the hint and his friends were telling him loudly not to drink anymore or scream. It got quiet for about 10 minutes and then from inside my tent I saw headlights and heard a car pulling out. I figured someone was taking him home cause he was being annoying and ruining the fun for everyone. I'm finally starting to doze off and with my eyes closed I see a big blue flash and then a loud noise. There was a substation down the street and I'm pretty sure that guy drove himself into it or something close to it cause it was crazy bright and loud. I would say I feel sorry for the guy, but he was the most annoying person I had never met in my life. I probably heard him do his stupid ass Mario scream 15 times that night after 1 am. Went to an empty campground in the mountains in California. The weather was bad, January of 16 or 17. We were set up near a small river cooking a late dinner in the dark after night fell. My old dog, a husky, starts absolutely losing his mind. He was screaming and barking at a place beyond our lantern light away towards the river. I flipped on my headlamp, and it was a mountain lion. It stared back at me for a second or two, then turned and I lost it in the brush. Those eyes staring back at me, bring your dog camping with you. Went camping on the Mendocino coast of California in 80s-90s. The first night at the campground we hear what sounds like a woman screaming like she's being murdered. It terrified us all awake. After a sleepless night we learned that there was a peacock sanctuary nearby and that's how they sound. My sons and I went camping in a very remote spot deep in the Idaho woods. We went for a 2-mile hike even deeper into the woods and came across a perfect circle about 5 feet in diameter made completely of bones with a smaller circle of bones in the center of the circle with a deer skull placed directly in the middle. On the way back we looped around and found ourselves in front of a dense group of birch trees that gave off the darkest vibe. My sons and I all had goosebumps. We bypassed the birches and eventually made it back to camp. I think that 90% of the creepy, paranormal, supernatural stories you hear about the woods have rational explanations including my story, but even though the ring of bones was odd, it's the dark ominous feeling that we all got from the birches that really unsettled me. Back in the late 1980s I was camping with a friend off the Ortega Highway in Southern California. It was a lovely autumn afternoon. As we were getting ready to take a long walk, some more campers drive in and, as people do, ignored a whole bunch of empty campsites to park right next to us. Their stereo went on immediately and loudly. We escaped the campground for our walk, and after a very nice time we started heading back. As we were walking along a fire road, we heard what sounded like someone sliding down a rock-strewn hill. We round the bend and see our new neighbors next to a pickup truck. They have long guns with them and as we got closer we realized the sound we heard was them shooting at the side of a hill in full auto, machine gun mode, if you will. They're not shooting at anything, and don't seem terribly menacing. We nodded at them as we walk by. Flashed forward to about 3 a.m. the next morning and the sound of Pink Floyd Dark Side of the Moon is echoing through the little valley where our campground is. Did I mention it was 3 a.m.? I like DSOTM as much as the next aging hippie, but it was 3 a.m. I finally got up, left at the tent and walked into the neighboring space, approaching slowly. The automatic rifles were leaning against the picnic table, and as I walked up, one of the campers reached for one of the guns, but did not raise it menacingly. I smiled and asked if they could turn down their stereo. They didn't seem to be happy, but they turned it down. Until I was just about back over to our tent, when they turned it up even louder. Not long before dawn, I believe they treated us to some Leonard Skinner. We left about 8 a.m. It's a pretty little campground, but I've never been back. Mountain lion tracks over our tracks. That was pretty spooky. Same area we camped next to this lake in July, and this rabbit came up and just hung out in our camp. We thought it was something terrifying sneaking up, bear or aforementioned mountain lion, until this cute little bunny just pops out of the underbrush. He hung out at our camp for probably 3 hours or so before we went to bed finally. The spooky part of the bunny was, what the fuck is out there that this wild rabbit would rather stay super close to the humans? Kept my Glock on me for piss breaks. Not my story, but my childhood friend wandered off with a buddy on a scout trip and found a corpse in the woods. Had a .22 caliber hole between its eyes. The two of them were 13-ish. He went to the trial, and had been advised that he might have to testify, since he discovered a murder victim. But they ended up not calling either of the kids. We went off for a grouse hunt during our camping trip. Things weren't going so well. We hadn't seen any signs of chickens, or of any animals for that matter. We didn't hear so much as a squirrel. The night before was different, however. We thought we could hear some kind of low cry, but had dismissed it and stoked up our fire. While we were looking for chickens, we came across a fresh bear cub carcass. Chewed to shit, looked like a pretty rough death. Went camping as a kid up in the Appalachian Mountains, somewhere in Virginia, with family out there. In the middle of the night we heard a scream that woke us all up that sounded like a woman being murdered. I damn near peed myself. They told me it was some monster, which only scared me more. Years later I came across a video of a fox screaming, and it was the exact same sound. Lost with no service with my best friend in the Pike National Forest, Colorado, and managed to find a dispersed site campground, just dry lots in a loop you could pull up and claim in the dead of night. Picked our dry lot, tramped a couple yards into the trees to set up our hammocks for the evening. After picking a hammock spot and slinging them up, we decided to take a little stroll around the loop to stretch and wind down before we turned in. In the center of the loop was an untamed grove of shrubbery and small trees. This night was so unnaturally dark, we had to bust out the headlamps to get around safely. We preferred to walk around in the dark. As we are finishing up our last lap around the loop before we returned to the car to finish settling in, I heard fainting rustling coming from the shrubbery and turned to look into it. As I do that, I make very intense eye contact with two very large, forward-facing eyeballs about 15 to 20 feet from our spot on the gravel drive. The longer I stared, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up as details came into focus. Rounded ears, apex eyes, very feline. It was a fucking mountain lion. I vividly remember pointing at it and asking, "Rebecca, what the fuck is that? Are you also seeing that?" We immediately started panic giggling like two teenage girls, talking very loudly and backing away with linked hands. It never made a move towards us that we saw. I think it was just observing us. We abandoned everything that we had lugged out of the car already, hopped in and didn't leave for the rest of the night. We actually had a blast sleeping in the car, seats folded down into a mega bed with the windows cracked. Kind of wild to think that if we didn't go on our walk, we would have just turned in for the night, all snug in our hammocks. Who knows what could have happened with a big cat that close. Packing up our gear in the morning had me so on edge, I psyched myself into thinking we were being stalked by the cat.